Welcome to my weekly podcast, Later That Same Life. I'm Larry Fedoruk. New episodes of my podcast pop every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts, and also on my YouTube channel. Each week, a topic, a discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 6, Chapter 7.
Woke.
What is woke? I'm doing this podcast as much for myself as for anyone else. The reference to woke or being woke is far from new. In our popular culture, it has become more prominent since about 2020. However, as with most things, the history of it is much deeper. Woke, as a cultural reference or a movement, has almost come and gone already, and only in the last couple of years. But I feel it never really got its due, never really got the full coverage. Not enough of us, including me, really understood what woke was, is. I'm going to attempt to clear that up here. The simplest definition of woke is to be woke, to be alert, to be aware. The word woke in this case is a decades-old African-American reference, meaning to be watchful of the dangers that the Negro faced in racist America. Its earliest roots may go back almost 100 years to black activist Marcus Garvey. Garvey's movement was first called Africanism, an attempt to culturally unite the African diaspora worldwide. His 1923 essay was called Wake Up Ethiopia, Wake Up Africa. He opened many of his rally speeches by shouting out that phrase, Wake Up Africa. To wake up was to be awoke, and woke became the vernacular. Another major reference that helped woke stay common in the culture was by legendary American singer-songwriter Lead Belly. Listen carefully as Lead Belly uses the word woke in a 1939 interview about his song called The Scottsboro Boys.
I advise everybody to be a little careful when they go along through that, but stay woke, keep their eyes open.
Stay woke, keep their eyes open. The Scottsboro Boys is a major part of American history and is worth a stop here for a bit. The Scottsboro Boys, as they became known, were a group of black teens who rode the rails in the early 30s, seeking work and sustenance. It was the Great Depression. In one of the boxcars, they came across some women, all white, who were doing the same thing. When the train stopped at the yard in Scottsboro, Alabama, the mix of black men and white women led to the boys being accused of rape and thrown in jail. An angry mob surrounded the Scottsboro jail facility. The governor had to call in the National Guard just to prevent a lynching. Some of these boys as young as 13. The United States Supreme Court eventually ruled on this case, but only a few of the Scottsboro boys were actually released. It is said that Harper Lee drew on this case and the many court challenges to write her seminal novel To Kill a Mockingbird. Lead Belly wrote a song about them.
Holy Alabama, and you better watch out. The landlord gets you gonna jump and shout. Scottsboro boys, they tell what it's all about. Oh, them landlords, if they get you, boy, they gonna hang you. Holy Alabama.
The song was used as a lesson. Stay woke. The sad and tragic Scottsboro Boys saga is a particularly important chapter in the American Civil Rights Movement because it marked one of the first times that the North, i.e. New York lawyers and the Supreme Court in D.C., intervened directly into the racist practices of the South. Racism in America, of course, is not confined to the South, but certainly prominent there, especially in the day. There, more than anywhere, a black person must stay woke. For decades, well into the 1960s, woke was part of the black culture in the United States. So-called black slang Fast forward to 1962 and an article in the New York Times Magazine. It was called "If You're Woke, You Dig It." In the article, an African-American writer talked about the appropriation of black slang by white New York beatniks. Ah, yes, the beatniks. Precursors to the hippie movement. Lousy beatniks, they're stealing the language. Remember the early activist Marcus Garvey? He had passed in 1940, but in the early 1970s, a play was written and produced with the title Garvey Lives. In the play, there is a line, and it goes, "I've been sleeping all my life, and now that Mr. Garvey done woke me up, I'm gonna stay woke, and I'm gonna help wake up other black folk." So through the American civil rights movements of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, woke was there. It just wasn't part of the big speeches, the daily news, the chatter. In 2009, singer-songwriter Erykah Badu released a song called Master Teacher, subtitled I Stay Woke, which brought the term not only to a new generation, but to a wider audience.
I stay woke. What if they do is no niggas, only master teachers. Now I stay woke.
Black Lives Matter began in earnest around 2013, and that initiative began to bring woke to the streets. In 2014, there was a police killing in Ferguson, Missouri, Michael Brown, and Stay Woke became the chant of Black Lives Matter protesters. Around this time, for a lot of us, the word and its deeper meaning began filtering into our conscious. Many people like me were saying, "Oh, yeah, woke. Yeah, I know what that means, I think." But then right around that time came this other word, COVID. Oh, yeah, I guess I better learn about that one first. I am skipping through history rather lightly here as far as the evolution of the word and the movement. I know that, but my goal here is to give you an overview and not to get too bogged down in detail. Here's what else has led to the confusion around the meaning of woke. The word has been A, compromised, and B, weaponized against the very people who believe in it. And that has also happened mainly in the last 2 years. First, the compromise. If you ask a lot of the younger generation today, they will tell you that woke is to be aware of the injustices in our world against people of color, women, the LGBTQ2 community, et al. Woke now seems to cover not only racism, but sexism, misogyny, bigotry, and prejudice of any kind. Remember, the word was African American slang for awoke. Woke. From Garvey through Leadbelly, Badu, and all those in between who wrote about them, it's been the property, if you will, of black culture. And now it's been appropriated to mean woke to any segment of the population that has a problem. Activist Marcus Garvey intended Wake Up to be a cultural call, a rally cry for the masses. But right then after that, it came to be more of an individual instruction, a watch your back kind of thing for black Americans. Be aware, get the Green Book and read it, avoid Scottsboro, Alabama, etc. Now, full circle, woke again means greater awareness, to be hip to the cultural and systematic issues that hold back people of a certain color, gender, and orientation, and age, and so forth. Woke came up from the black culture, but has been appropriated by almost anyone fighting injustice. Woke as a movement has been largely assigned to the radical left. This has been done mostly by the radical right. They dubbed woke as woke culture, and this has been led largely by presidential hopeful Florida governor and scary mofo Ron Dangerous DeSantis, who actually said
We will fight the woke in the businesses. We will fight the woke in government agencies. We will fight the woke in our schools. We will never, ever surrender to the woke agenda. Florida is the state where woke goes to die.
Wow. Ron DeSantis. Remember again, modern day woke, as far as race is concerned, is no longer about being able to eat at the same lunch counter or buy a house in a certain neighborhood. It's about a greater awareness of decades and decades of systematic, ingrained racial injustice. Injustice that even today shows us that citizens of Jackson, Mississippi can't even get clean tap water. And that is almost a repeat of Flint, Michigan, both cities predominantly black, and both claiming that the funding of basic infrastructure was racially motivated. Woke today will point out that an upper-middle-class black couple had to lie about their race in order not to lose about $300,000 on the sale of their home. True story. Woke would like a chance to teach all history in schools, the good and the bad. All Americans, and Canadians for that matter, should learn about everything. That is, if we want any chance in successfully moving forward into the future. The radical right, the conservatives, by and large frightened by change of any kind, have dubbed woke, a woke movement, woke culture, as the scariest thing happening. People like DeSantis, Trump, MAGA Republicans, and even other GOP members now use woke as a euphemism. Many of them realize that they won't get voted in if they are openly anti-black or anti-gay. Instead, now they use the word woke. Woke culture. It's code. It's part of that whole dog whistle mentality. If people are woke, then they may realize that they are being suppressed. Can't have that. There are many Americans who believe that we can all get along and live together as long as the black man knows his place. To them, woke is almost literally poking that sleeping bear. One consequence of this weaponization is the reluctance by people to actually use the word in its most positive sense. I don't think woke is going away, but the situation now is such that high-profile conservatives have so far succeeded in creating a fear around it. We all know how that works, or we should by now. Everything from shampoo to presidents and prime ministers has been sold to us with fear. Create the fear, offer a solution, be the hero. And remember, conservatives are the same group that equate the January 6th attack on the Capitol or the Truckers' Freedom Convoy in Ottawa with events such as Black Lives Matter marches. They see no difference between them. Hey, I'm an older white male, and even I don't have to be woke to realize that the history of race in North America is not a story of a nuanced class struggle. This is about men, women, and children in chains, slavery, literal slavery for over 100 years of American existence, and then over 150 years of social slavery. Protests over this treatment were called woke culture. Meanwhile, racists waving Confederate flags, armed with open carry weapons, attacking the peaceful transfer of power after a fair election, that's called patriotism? I don't think so. That just doesn't equate. Many loud Americans don't want the so-called woke culture to be taught in schools. They call it indoctrination. I say the truth hurts. They don't want woke or critical race theory or alternative religion or anything that upsets their status quo. To recap, woke is African American slang going back almost 100 years, and it directed black Americans to be awake, alert, aware to racist dangers. It has been appropriated of late to mean being wise to all injustice, especially of a cultural and systemic nature. Woke has been shifted from a method of practical survival to a threat on an American way of life. American way of life. Obviously, that means different things to different people. Woke is now used as a word to further divide society. Woke has been kicked over to the far left by conservatives who've also made the word progressive a negative. Oh, you're one of those progressives. That word is now a synonym for radical. And on that radical left, there they are, the wokes. There's woke police, who are largely responsible for the cancel culture, they say. A recent poll asked Americans which extremism was dividing the country more, the far right or the far left. The far right won that one, but not by much. But here's my question. How did a wish for change, equality, a concern for the welfare of humanity, a call for an end to social stigma and injustice, presenting our actual history so that we can learn from it, how did that all become the radical left? How are any of those things radical at all? Well, we know how. I'll name names. Trump, DeSantis, Harper, Poilievre, many more. They sell the fear. Conservatism is partly based on the premise that any gain by anyone else is their loss. Here's the thing. There are no woke police. There's no actual woke movement, per se. There's no organization called woke, with offices in Toronto, Washington, New York, Los Angeles, and Paris. They don't have their own stationery. There's no secret handshake. Woke is an intellectual concept right now. Some woke people may in fact preach the redistribution of wealth and power, but it's not communism or Marxism. There may be various groups sensitive to woke, invoking woke in their doctrines, but woke right now is more of a personal enlightenment, which through modern technology we are able to share and discuss. There's no church of woke, as a certain popular podcaster has recently said. I imagine woke has a religious vibe to it for some people, but really no more than any other ethic or credo that we might adopt in order to get through our lives. I'm saying all this because a lot of people seem to be taking a lot of time to attack something that actually isn't there. There's woke. I just don't know that it's a movement. I don't feel particularly woke. I do believe that centuries of racial bias, and in some cases outright racism, are built into our governments, our laws, our mores, our language, and our actions. Here's a small example of language. This has always bothered me. What do we call those who are homeless, poverty-stricken, starving? We use the term underprivileged. And we don't think anything about that. Underprivileged. I mean, what kind of top-down term is that? Like a roof over your head, food and water are some kind of privilege as opposed to a basic human right. That's how we perceive it. Hey, you're not underprivileged. You are overly challenged. I am a person of privilege, including white privilege. Yet every day I'm able to come up with yet another roadblock faced by someone who isn't me. Yet I don't feel particularly woke. And even if I did, woke is just a first step. Woke. Awoke. Wake up. You're awake. That's great. But what's the point if you're just going to lie in bed all day?
Later That Same Life is written, produced, and voiced by Larry Fedoruk. Larry Fedoruk, 37 at gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.
This episode of Later That Same Life is brought to you by Florida Tourism.
Florida is the state where woke goes to die. Florida is the state where
Common sense.
goes to die. Florida is the state where
Fairness.
goes to die. Florida is the state where
Human rights.
goes to die. Florida is the state where
Donald Trump.
goes to die. Florida is the state where
America.
goes to die.
Florida. The turd that looks like it's coming out of the squatting ass that is the United States. Go to Florida and die. I am not Ron DeSantis, and I do not approve this message.